Okay, so I think I've finished setup. Thought I had it finished before, but I had to rearrange the miners for this third coalition, 1805 to 1814. There's no reason there's an 1815 scenario that I know of. We don't have one, do we? I don't think so. There's the 1796 introductory. Then we hit the campaigns. Where? Oh, here are the shorts. Maybe there's an 1815 specific. Yeah, there's the 100 days scenario. Which again, the game doesn't allow to be kind of incorporated into the campaign, which, you know, I just feel like, look, War and Peace managed to do it with a cool little, hey, France has another year. But the fucked up thing about the War and Peace scenario is France might be able to win the game because all they have to do is hold, like, historically, France would win the game if Napoleon didn't come back. It was that Napoleon came back that, like, caused them to have the loss, the victory, the losing conditions, essentially, the automatic loss conditions that they would have otherwise gotten. Now, they wouldn't win, but they would win a two-player game, and it's just fucked up. Like, all the campaign rules in War and Peace are fucked up. I don't know if the new version corrected that. That was a pretty glaring issue. The victory conditions were kind of half-assed there. Empires in Arms doesn't really care. Like, it just has victory conditions based on how well your nation has done over the course of the game and how well it's doing at the very end of the game. Primarily, well, let's call it a mix of them, because if you gain or lose territory, that counts at the end of the game. But you also, like in EU, have sort of a glory value that you've gained through the game. So like a France that's defeated in Empires in Arms can win the game. This one, I already went over some of my problems with the victory conditions. We'll worry about the French automatic conditions, etc. But where the hell was I? I don't know. Yeah, it just feels weird, like, to have that 1815 in here. To me, the whole thing feels like it just didn't get put together correctly. Anyway, figured out what the minors are. There are some situations, like I explained, that the rules wouldn't allow to have happen if you could play a 1792 to 1815 campaign. So, like, Venice is in a weird sort of situation. I think if France conquers Venice, it becomes an independent country. I don't think that's what happened to Venice. I think it was incorporated into the Kingdom of Italy. There's no counter for the Kingdom of Italy, diplomacy-wise. So I've got, like, Piedmont and Lombardy there to cover for it. It can't be diplomatized. I've also made a guess as to what the satellites are, following the rules for satellites, because by 1805, there's been a winter turn. Those could have been promoted from allies to satellites, which just means that they can't be diplomatized, right? The rules have gotten kind of foggy in my head, the base rules to the game, as well as you could see from my attempt to make sense out of the rules that were in the playbook, that they just, like, I was hoping that the Grand Campaign, that all the campaign games would have a more solid rule basis than playing the 1792 scenario or whatever. The actuality is, it feels like when you add the multiplayer rules and you add everything else in, it just falls apart even more. Now again, the Banania rules might correct that. I assume they actually do correct most of it. Like, I looked it up and saw one of the things that I really couldn't cope with the continental system. They seem to have a good answer for that. I think a lot of these, that one especially, you know, in particular actually, are things that came up in the errata, but there is no actual errata published, is the problem. It's, I guess, just incorporated in threads, punching through like the Consim World forum on the game or something, and that somebody went through and you know, and collated all those and tried to put them together. But anyhow, I don't have a lot of hope that I'm going to be playing anything that actually, you know, holds together. I'm going to be trying to fudge where I can, look up rules online if I have to, etc. So where do we start with this scenario? Well, it just starts in the summer turn, which I get, you know, unlike this one, which starts with the activation phase, we're going to start with the good old spring interphase in the summer. It is Thursday. Good God. The week has, I mean, I don't know. Yesterday I slept all day. But then today I got up at like 9 a.m. So I don't know what's going on, but I want to play. I want to get started and get into the play of this, and we're going to be fighting with the rules a little bit. So the start's going to be a little rocky, like it was, you know, with the other scenarios too. But we are in an interesting position. So we're sitting here with the navies out there, with the French having the Grand Army in position to invade Britain. You know, a big part of the game could be decided by the naval phases in this first turn. Given all that, I think both sides are probably going to throw their naval chit, their extra naval chit into play, just because this is the vital turn of the year for the Navy stack. Well, it may be, it may not be, right? Like, but you know, if things get decided one way or the other, it may not matter that there's an extra chit in there. But if the French win the naval war at this point, they really need another action. Another option would be to hold off, but this is the best time to cross. There's nothing. So one of the things that kind of screwed with the French invasion attempt was weather. But the bigger thing was the naval control. But invading Britain's not trivial. And the idea that you, or invading Normandy for that matter, the idea that you could just count on there's going to be good weather for an invasion, even over the course of a 3-month period, yeah, maybe in more modern warfare, but at this point, yeah, not so much. I mean, think about the Spanish Armada. Think about some other times when, you know, cross-channel operations went really awry. So, you know, the ships here aren't that much better. Aren't that much more seaworthy to handle something like that, especially under the pressures, etc. I'm trying to psych myself up to actually start moving some pieces, but I don't think that's going to happen right away. I think I need a break just after the setup and this little intro part. Yeah, we're not going to get new event cards, but we do have the public events, 1 per block. Now, what blocks do we have? Right now, I say we have a coalition that comprises of, well, we have the French and the Spanish as the imperial bloc. We have a coalition which comprises of who? That's a short scenario. What the hell? What the hell? Got confused here. Britain, Russia, Austria, and then Prussia and Turkey are in the neutral pile. Okay, back up not too long later. There are some special rules to this one. Austrian Army of the Rhine, on its first activation, has to move to first besiege the fortress at Ratisbon, and then move through Munich to besiege Ulm. The Max army here, it has some initial successes historically, which drive Napoleon to march down. I kind of like that Napoleon starts here. I'm used to this campaign in most games starting just a little bit later than this, after France gives up on the invasion of Britain. And maybe they just kind of have to, right? Which is something I got to think about in terms of putting those naval chits in when we get there. Second is the army of Italy has to move to besiege the fortress of Mantua. If Mantua falls, it's freed up at that point. And that will be Charles's army down here. And then Prussian unpredictability. This is a nice one. It's scripting, but if Prussia, whether played or unplayed, joins the war on either side, they cannot automatically move their forces outside of Prussia. On each diplomacy phase, they have to roll a d6 to move their forces for the rest, and this will be lifted in 1806. If you're playing Empires in Arms, and I think War and Peace as well, as a full 6-player game, or 6 or 7-player game, depending on which one you're playing, Prussia almost inevitably gets themselves involved in stuff right away. And historically, they didn't. They weren't in that first, the third coalition, as it were. In Empires in Arms, they have their best army they'll probably ever have. And what it all did was it put you in a position where you had an ahistorical, you often have an ahistorical gang up on France for this third coalition. I'm not saying that the nations didn't want to. Prussia was definitely anti-French, but they held out of it. And that was important to the flow of the situation as a whole. What I find in War and Peace is, because of the way the victory conditions are set up, everybody wants to jump in against France, probably including Spain, simply because of the way the victory conditions are cooked up. Spain in this game wants Portugal for their automatic victory, and they think maybe they can sleaze that by being pro-French, and they're at war with Portugal at the beginning of the scenario, whatever. In Empires in Arms, I have a different view on things, which is that Russia actually has certain advantages to not immediately starting at war with the French. Now, Empires in Arms starts in 1805, but not at the usual starting point. It actually starts at the beginning of the year. For the setup for that, you're allowed to start at war with anybody you like, which I think is a bad idea. I think it would be better to start with only Britain and France at war and allow the alliances to form and pay their prices for wars that they declare over the course of that first year. I feel like that provides a better platform than just letting everybody have a free declaration of war, because you always get an ahistorical start in 1805 if you follow the actual rules of Empires in Arms. Why am I talking about these things? I don't know. I should be playing this, right? All right, let's see what we're going to do. Spring interphase. There's no event phase except for the one event card per block. At the beginning of the game, there are only a couple of event cards out. I think France has a couple. Trying to see where, because I don't see them listed here. There we go. Okay, yeah, France has a couple and Britain has one. Britain's is the Nelson card, which is a very powerful single fight, but might get them to lose Nelson, more likely. Kind of a scripted card to try to prevent the invasion of Britain. That's not a public event, and the French do not have a public event either. An army commanded by Napoleon may be activated during a French round without an activation marker. May move twice its movement factor and may engage in battle without an attrition camp. This is important. It allows France to reposition against the Austrians quickly. But it also gives them the option to push into Britain if things are freed. The flank attack, the inactive player suffers a big penalty. Okay. Flank march. Okay. Sweet enough. Those are my only things. We have no public events, so nothing is forced to be played. Cool. Although, honestly, if there was a grand campaign, I feel like there should be public events that are ready, just like there are, so that the 1805 situation had some of its specifics outlined right now. But I don't know what there is. We're not at economy and budget, but we are at reinforcement and replacement. We get to do this, and this is important. Everybody's got bucks out there. So the first question to look at is, does everybody have the armies on the field that they want to have? Does anybody want to build another army? If Prussia wanted to enter the war, they would have to build an army. The idea of declaring war without an army seems like, or with a 1 in 6 chance of being able to actually fight, seems like a really bad idea. Still might be worth it, but what it might end up meaning is that Prussia doesn't fight and they're forced into that 1806 scenario without like making a choice on it. So I think they probably hold off. Britain doesn't have a big field force, so I don't think they're going to form an army. Russia wants to build an army, but I don't have to do it yet. I'm not up there. I am over in Russian territory. So I think everybody's going to hold off on their reinforcements. Puts me to diplomacy. Now here again we have another option to play additional event cards, but those happen whenever the fuck you like, and then it talks about public events which are handled over in the events phase of the spring interphase. All weirdness there. There's no time for full discussion. I'm going to play that kind of loose, which is to say that I'm going to try to use the post-mail concept in play, which is that unless somebody talked to people beforehand, they really can't cut any deals. Like, unless they started making a discussion the turn before. All this is kind of, loosey-goosey, but yeah, I'm not going to write things out or anything like that. We look through these. Spanish instability. Okay, let's take a look at that. That's 14.4. We looked up this rule just a moment ago. Influence check is a 14 for trying to change Spain. Now, that doesn't matter. This instability check, this part of it doesn't have a fucking thing to say about the multiplayer game. Spain's being played by a player. During each diplomacy, when it's allied, it can be the target of a diplomacy influence check. Spain can break her, okay, in a multiplayer game, Spain can break her alliance with a major power as soon as steps from this major power have entered her national territory and a Dos de Mayo event has been played. Then a liberation war begins. Yeah, I don't think Spanish instability matters in the multiplayer game. I don't think it has any impact. Turkish instability does. It allows them to get out of wars and stuff, which is kind of funky too. But influencing minor countries, we are going to have cash to be able to do this. So now here comes an interesting situation. Look, Austria has enough money for another fortress, as does basically everybody except Spain and Turkey. Spain and Turkey may want to play around with diplomacy. Other countries may too. So let me think about whether or not the miners are going to consider any diplomacy at this point. And yeah, I'm taking it real slow, you know, because I'm trying to get reused to playing this game. Got a number of diplomatic checks. Let's go over the ones that succeeded. Quite a few, actually. Spain. Spain got Morocco on their side. Is this a big deal? I don't know. They won it, you know, but yeah, it's not going to make much difference, but it's an extra core, but it's more territory to defend, so it's sort of a mixed blessing. Turkey did not get Egypt. Austria didn't find anything that they could roll for. Prussia got Hesse on its side. Now, I'm going with what I went with before, which is that these miners, when they come in with a turns build, because they were not in the war in 1805, and presumably were built up. Now, there are countries that are set up, allied already. For example, Saxony is allied with Prussia. They don't start with any troops on the board, so, or if they do, they're intermingled somewhere. So they have their forces available, but not yet built. Is it reasonable that these miners come in with troops? As far as I'm concerned, it is. I think actually the Saxons probably should have troops, but that may be just to provide for a better Saxon unpreparedness come the 1806 campaign. You wouldn't want to give them a double force. I could actually check the 1806 campaign. I think there's a short scenario for it. Just to see, hey, did the Saxons set up with like a bigger force than they would here? It might be interesting. But some interesting things came up as well. Like that didn't do much. I think the biggest one, the Morocco's interesting, but I think the biggest one is that France got Denmark. Now, the rules as written, the Danes aren't able to build a navy again, but Denmark is always neutral, and no one would ever be able to build their navy if that's the case. They almost certainly had their, wouldn't let their navy just disappear, right? So no matter what, I am letting them build their fleet, and that's going to make a big possible difference to what the French can do. A couple extra ships might be the edge that we need to allow for an invasion of Britain, and I'm going to try to go for it, And then I guess that's it, honestly. Turkey already had Tunisia at the beginning, I think. I rolled for Egypt. Just trying to absorb Egypt, and Britain could have rolled for Egypt, probably the most valuable thing they could go for, but they went for the Hanseatic League instead, which maybe is, actually no, they went for Egypt, sorry. The Hanseatic League would be a really iffy thing in this circumstance. The Danes are positioned to possibly invade Sweden, in addition to whatever they can do with their fleets. Of course, if the fleets don't win, they kind of want to defend Copenhagen. And that's it. for the diplomacy side of things, I think. Which means it's time to build the initiative pool. There will not be a winter quarters in there. I think both the British and French are going to put a naval chit in there. And then the French get to choose what they want to do first. I do believe they're going to pick one of their naval chits and try to force the British fight. You know, I'm up here. It's, what, getting on 3 p.m. on a Thursday. Time passes so fucking quickly because I have maybe an hour or two a day. That's what I'm doing here that I can kind of fight my way away from today. What did I spend my day on? I got up early enough, but multiple times, but I kept going back to sleep and just dreaming and enjoying the dreams. This is not, I don't know what is. You know, but instead of, this is no different from normal, right? Like, I'm just hiding from everything. And it's just all there is. Anyway, let's get to the game and not what I'm up to. But it's why I play so slowly now and I don't get anything done, is I'm just hiding in my addictions. I had chosen the Empire Naval counter to open things up. So we're going to see if the French can fight their way out of the naval situation. And I have that extra navy from Copenhagen, well, actually 2 navies, which might help me break some of these blockades. The goal of it all is a Trafalgar type situation, and for the more importantly, to try to open the channel up so that I can cross over and just take Britain out. Quick one here. Let me see if I can find the naval combat. There we go. I remember how to do this. We got 2 fleets facing each other off outside of Holland here, and we got a +2 for the Brits under Elphinstone, and De Winter is a +1. So we look for dice. There we go. +2 to the British, +1 to the French. We roll a number of dice equal to the navies, and we get this, and we end up with a 1-point difference, which means De Winter is sent back in, and the English have been successful. And we're going to do that kind of thing everywhere. Where things get interesting is when we try to apply pressure on the channel itself. But I don't know how I'm going to do that yet. Over here we have a French fleet breaking out of Toulon, try to make its way up this way, maybe gather up with the Spanish fleet. And again, trying to put pressure on the edges of where the Allied forces are. Once I can see, if I can eliminate some of the stuff around the edges, then the stuff around those edges can try to push in deeper. But we're basically going for naval combat everywhere. Anyway, the French come in and they're going to try, and the English are going to try to intercept with Hood. Hood's got a +3. Wrong kind of interception. I don't have an event card that affects this. Just thinking about it. That's a 10. 10 is always successful on interception, so now we have the naval battle. We'll actually just get to that. That's again +2, +1. Could just add 1 to the Brits. It's just a difference, right? That's a 3-point difference, which means the French fall back. We'll send them back to Toulon. Got to remember which fleets have moved. Do the English want to stay where they are? I think I'm able to intercept into the Western Med if I'm there, so I think being in the Gulf of Leon is more valuable to me. There is no adjacent interception. Interception, again, the rules are so shitty. We went over this before, but not that the rules are shitty. We went over that a lot. But I look for something that says avoidance and interception. Well, that just says how it's done and what the role is, not what it does. What it does is up here, and it's different whether you're in a blockade box or not. But when I find this, When a fleet enters a sea area, an enemy naval squadron at sea, it doesn't say where, can attempt to intercept, followed by squadrons blockading harbors while obeying the rule. If a naval squadron interception, blockading succeeds in intercepting a moving fleet, it goes into the sea area. But there's nothing about intercepting from one area to another, which to me means I might as well go here. I might as well follow him up and blockade him, because it does mean no good to be in the Gulf of Leon. It just means that fleet's got an easier time getting out. If there were two fleets in this area, it would make sense to kind of blockade them both by being in the sea area. Not an actual blockade, but whatever. But what I was hoping for was that I would be able to interfere with the Spanish fleet. I'm not going to be able to with that. I can with this one, though. The combined French-Spanish fleet leaves Cadiz, and that'll be 3 dice on each side. I have 3 red and blue dice because they're the most likely to be in this position. +4 for the English, +3 for the French. Again, that's just a +1. I don't have to specify it all out. This has Nelson. +1 isn't that good, but an extra die is. But +1 isn't that good. But that extra die could lose me Nelson for winning. So I'm going to just go with the +1. I'm not going to use the Nelson card for, the Trafalgar situation, really. And that was a 6. Okay, so 13 to 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a 3-point difference. The British are defeated. That means the French have made it here at 1 movement point. It cost them another movement point to come out, but a French fleet has been freed. These guys can go to a port. We'll send them to, I guess, Gibraltar. They're not allowed to intercept this again. And now that Spanish force is free to operate. Well, that combined force is free to operate. With 1 movement point used, they have 8 movement points total. That's a big force. That's enough to open the channel up. So 2, 3. We don't want to intercept that. 4. We don't want to intercept it. It's too big. But maybe we have to, because that's going to make it to the channel. And then if the Empire gets a movement, they can cross the channel. I let them go by. That fleet has a 6 movement. The English are going to try to leave with a naval avoidance. And that gives them a +3. A 9 does not do it. Now, there's no penalty for trying to navally avoid, but that means this is going to be an ugly fight. At +3 on 3 dice to a 0 on 1. There's no ship capture in this or anything like that, which was a major factor. I don't mind getting rid of that kind of stuff, but that's going to knock this British fleet out of the way. I don't know if that costs an extra movement point for naval movement, but he just shows up there. Now, I don't remember in naval combat, which is in a different section of the rules, right? Naval movement is like under the movement rules. Basically, it's like land movement, naval movement. It makes some sense, but then combat goes over here, and then when they do naval, when they give an example, they give an example of the entire operation, which is, it's kind of like half the rules, more than half the rules, because naval combat's really simple, are gone. The Admiral has a chance of being dead permanently. Oh, he's not where he is. An 11, that's 1 point less than I needed. Otherwise, what happens? When a naval force is defeated, it's not available right away, but it really doesn't matter. maybe it is. It takes so much to buy him, I don't think it makes a difference. So I'll put him over there. And is there a movement point cost for naval battle? You know, so I look in resolving naval battles, I look in naval warfare, I don't see anything that says it very quickly, and I don't recall having one, so I'm going to say no. There is for land movement. But now I've moved 6, I've gotten here, and now it's time to start fucking with the English. To driving them away, is my view. I could go in and try to beat up the Bay of Biscay fleet, or I could beat up some of these blockading fleets. The reason for this is I have a numerical advantage right now locally, and I should just be trying to take as much advantage of it as I can. So we'll move into here. That'll be the 7th move. And then the English try to get away because they have less fleets and they're not great. So they have a +3 on the... That's a 9. That's not going to work. So now it's +3 to +1 for the English here. That's 15 to 8, which is a 7-point difference on the combat table, which is 1 fleet is sunk. I get to choose which one. That'll be the crappy one, of course. But of course, the crappy naval leaders aren't the ones that necessarily die, you know, aren't available, but, you know, whatever. Anyway, I get to withdraw. Where do we withdraw to? I don't think we're allowed to. Yeah, we are. Right? What's the retreat rules? Cannot take place through a sea area under exclusive control of the enemy. Oh, and that's another thing. You can retreat back to where you came from for 1 movement point. So you're not necessarily out of it. Yeah, we'll flee, I guess, back up to Portsmouth. But now I can go after this, and I believe there's no chance to get away from that. See. Target fleets can attempt to avoid combat. Yeah, great, thanks. This is within a sea, so it doesn't even matter. The blockade box, that would be my 8th movement point. The fleet blockading a harbor cannot avoid combat. Okay. So yeah, we'll move in and attack this. Another large fleet. And here, the French are at a net of +1 on 2 3-dice rolls. This might not go well for the French, but it might open things up for that other fleet to have an easier chance to get out if they do win. French are 9, 10 to 6. That's a 4-point difference. The English take another loss. Another set of English fleets withdraws. These guys have spent all their movement points. They're actually in the blockade box at this point and can't go anywhere else. Stacking always has to be oh, what is it? Honored. That's not quite the word. Respected was what I think I was looking for. Sometimes I have trouble finding the exact word I want. So if I had lost this with the French fleet, I would not want to go into the Bay of Biscay, because if I did that, I would prevent these fleets from leaving. As it stands right now, though, we continue playing around with fleets. I don't have to enter the harbor box on my way out, so I don't have a stacking issue there. With what I did, I should have stayed in the channel with this fleet, although I did get some successes there. The problem is this 3-point fleet, let's take a look at how it is. It's pretty good. I probably want this to be in the channel to prevent the Brits from being able, if they get their naval move, if they get a coalition, well, yeah, if they get a coalition naval move, to prevent them from, you know, being able to keep Napoleon from crossing. It's not a guarantee, but it is a reasonable thing. But this does, even though they were defeated, this does get a chance to intercept still, even in this same phase. There's no limitations like there are in ground combat on multiple interceptions and stuff like that. Once you're defeated in a ground combat phase, you're not able, you know. But yeah. So I think I'm not even sure about that. I can try to clear stuff along the edges with this fleet. I could try to do something with this, but he's in danger if he comes out because of Gibraltar. So I think my most important thing right now is to sail into here. The Brits are going to want to intercept. They have a +3. Always 10 or more. Looks like they get it. These guys went 1, 2. Let me put a die. This was at Portsmouth. Well, no, it wasn't. But and we got another little battle here, which is a 4-3. French are at +1. This is why I should have just stayed there. I had as good a fleet coming out of Bry, but it's okay. Because we got a 14 to an 8. That's another victory on the Brits, against the Brits. This time we lose a better leader. Doesn't matter. And we're forced back into Portsmouth. We do not want to blockade this. We want to stay in the channel at this point. So we're done moving that. I think this is the only. We got the fleet up there too, the Danish fleet. The Danish fleet will probably go down and deal with that blockade there. The reality is the naval system feels like, first of all, it's a fairly smooth. Once you deal with the rules itself, it's a fairly smooth and clean playing system. But it feels like a couple of naval successes allow you to kind of snowball it into naval control, which is what the French have just kind of succeeded in doing. I managed to defeat Elephantine's fleet here with the Danes. Now, there's still Russian and Swedish fleets, so I'm not alone. You know, I'm still facing probably forces that outnumber me, to be honest. But right now I've got the short-term advantage, plus I've got the channel filled with my own boats, which means even if the coalition gets to go, there's a pretty strong navy there. That might be where the Nelson fleet, where the Nelson card gets played, is in the channel. It kind of doesn't make sense to do it somewhere like here. I had the slightly better odds with Nelson in his fight, and I mean, you know, minusculely better, but the idea of like a 50-50 chance of losing Nelson, that's a pretty big deal because he's a big and valuable fleet counter, which means on the overall, I would be in the worst position for having won a battle with Nelson using the card. The thing that's not clear, and this is kind of a clunky problem, I just had the French finally lose a battle up here, and they have their retreat. Now, they can retreat to a port, in which case they're done with their movement, or they can retreat to, did I cheat with blockade box? Are you not allowed to intercept? No, are you not allowed to intercept from a port, is my question. At sea, followed by blockading harbors. Yeah, so I actually cheated. These guys didn't get an interception attempt. I'm going to leave it be and deal with the fact. Once you're in, this is something I remembered from the last time. Once you're in port, you're stuck. So the only way I could remain at sea with the defeated ship is to go to the Bay of Biscay. I didn't want to do that, so I'll go back to Roquefort. That prevents me from intercepting the Allied forces. So that's actually somewhat of a problem for me. What do I have left at this point? I can try to fight my way out with this. And then depending on what happens, I have that fleet, which is still available. That effect of my naval turn, the last situation, the Spaniards, again, they were at a penalty. They blew their way out of La Coruna, and now they're blockading a fleet in Lisbon. They actually killed another British fleet. Really, the Brits have gotten really bad die rolls on their combats in general. But the net effect is we got a French fleet in the Channel. We got the English cleared out of most of the areas that are near the Channel. The only exception being there is a fleet, there is a squadron, 2 fleets in Portsmouth, but it doesn't really matter. These are the powerhouses that will clear the Channel if the Allies get an action phase. We're going to break there. That was the end of the naval action. The Spaniards and the French worked together. Great, perfectly fine. They are allied, and Turkey's not in this. So now Turkey probably wants to be kind of pro-French at times, but maybe not all the time. Right then, back up here. It's about a half hour past raid time. I haven't played any today, and I'm actually really considering just, if not just dropping the game, only playing it when I got nothing better to do, which is essentially dropping it. It's been like a job for me for the past 3.5 years. Nah, 3 years, 4 years, I don't know. Whatever. Too long. Anyhow, I'm back up here. I'm going to pull chits and play a little bit of this. I was out there reading. I'm sick of what this is doing to me. Just the addiction and all that. First chit is a coalition 1, which means all the coalition forces can move. And I look at my special rules. Austrian movement, both are at first possible activation. I have to do these things. I don't know if I'm, I think I'd be able to move other pieces in this activation before I move those, but I think I'd like to see what's going on with both the Army of Italy and the Army of the Rhine, and then react to that, because I'm forced to do these actions. A couple of operations, and this is just historical scripting, but there's possibilities things could go wrong. Ratisbon fell on the first siege attempt. Ulm did not fall, and Mantua did not fall. Messina was unable to intercept. Now I work on the rest of the Allied army, and this is, basically any detachments I have definitely have to move, and then I have to make decisions. Do other people want to shift into position, or am I good enough? I don't really know the sizes of the armies. This is going to be a long activation. Austrians moved the rest of their forces forward. Russians, almost everything moving forward. Took attrition checks with some of them to get that extra movement, because I'm on the 2 to 3 table with minuses, with a net of -2, +1 for being in Russia, but -3 for being within my home country. And the odds were pretty low, although I did get one where I rolled like an 11 or whatever, so I had a 50-50 chance of losing a step. But that felt worth it to just push things forward. I am leaving the forces down there in place in case Turkey gets any ideas. I don't know what they'll do, you know. I mean, here's the thing. You can't really face an enemy major power with just like garrison type stuff that's left behind. So probably worth, it really doesn't help that much on sieges either. So it's probably just worth just saying screw it, but it'll at least maybe buy me a turn or something. Unlikely. Same thing with St. Petersburg. I left forces up there. I'm not moving the Neapolitans. Notably, I'm not moving the English forward. I could try to prevent a crossing, but the English army is nothing compared to the Le Grand Armée. I mean, I'd be better off at Dover, maybe kind of, sort of, except that he could cross here and hit me in Dover anyway. So it really doesn't make any difference. London's not fortified, but yeah, I mean, it comes down to if France is able to get the first move, they're going to try to cross. They're going to try to knock the English out of the war for a while. This may be a short game. I said that a lot about the 1792 scenario too, though, because this thing can throw you some real variable curves, you know, like the fact that my navies were able to get control of the channel. That's not that unlikely either. The French have the option to grab that first chit. That first chit, they have the initiative. They get to pick what the first chit is of the game. So I've got like this magical ability to have a fair chance, maybe not 50-50, but a fair chance of the invasion of Britain. We'll see how it works. But damned if I'm not going to try it, man. Right now, France has a huge army. Britain does not. La, la, la. Anyway, we're going to stop there because, like I said, it was fairly heavy. There wasn't any fighting, just some sieges. Here reading, still ignoring raid. Doing my best. I really think it's time. I drew an Empire land marker 4. That means not a lot can move, but it does allow Napoleon to cross over. I'm dropping a depot here. So this is 3, 4, 5, 6 into here. I could try to force march or something like that to be tricky and try to avoid the river penalty, but it's only a -1 penalty, and I outnumber the Brits so much that they honestly will be overrun, I believe. They're sitting with 4 steps. No, they will not be overrun because it's 5-1 to overrun. So, you know, the Brits are going to get enough back, but London is their peace condition. Now, I looked up the peace conditions here and started looking through the rules. Once you get to choosing peace conditions after, you know, if there's a surrender, if Britain surrenders right away, they give 4 peace conditions. If they fight on, which would be stupid because they have no army, it goes up to 8 if they lose. But they're at war with Spain and France. And Spain and France will have conquered them, even though Spain's not really involved. France will get the first option because this is done in reverse diplomatic order. But what's kind of weird and not really handled in here, although I can make things up, is given here. The victor chooses if several major powers have defeated the same enemy, the choice of conditions is performed using reverse diplomatic order. The example then says Russia and Austria have conquered Turkey. Russia will choose the first peace condition. Austria will choose the second, and Turkey will choose the last 2. The defeated player gets some say in what they give up, much like in Empires in Arms. Now, I look at that and I say, okay, but there are some conditions, for example, military aid from the defeated power is 1, but war indemnities counts as 2 peace conditions. I don't don't think you can. So let's say France gets the first pick. Let's say they take, I don't know what. They could. There's not a lot that they really want to do. Extending the mandatory peace is a possibility. That might be a good choice. Mandatory alliance, maybe, maybe not. You don't get to force the ally to help you particularly. They're just allied, which means they'll join your wars and whatnot, I guess. But they could kind of play against you. So that doesn't seem terribly valuable. But nowhere in the playbook and nowhere in here can I find, can France pick the first peace condition and make it be one that counts as two? I don't know. I don't think so. It doesn't make sense. In which case, the fact that I have Spain with me, unless Spain agrees to the peace conditions that France is imposing, France only gets to pick one. And yeah, that's kind of painful. So by being part of a grand alliance or any kind of alliance, you kind of force yourself in a situation where there are things you just can't pick unless somebody agrees. Now, I think you probably can play some flexibility in there. Let's say France and Spain agreed to a mandatory alliance as their pick. France could reserve their point towards the mandatory alliance. We'd have to make shit up though. It's just not in the rules. It might be in the Banania rules. I don't know. But I feel like it's just not there. It's not part of the game, which means I should just make up whatever the fuck I want. And I think we're going to see a lot of that going forward. If I don't have a physical copy of the rules and can't mark up and make changes easily, fuck it. I'm not printing out a whole new copy of rules and using a lesser quality print job and whatever that I would get from this. I think if you're not willing to print out the Banania rules, don't fucking buy this game. I mean, I can't say, or some other, there's another set that I think more extensively changes the game. Doesn't, but yeah, don't fucking bother with trying to play this with the rules, trying to buy this and play it with the rules as written. You're going to have to make shit up all over the place, which is okay solo, I guess. But anyway, yeah, I mean, the peace conditions don't really work properly. In Empires in Arms, an earlier game, they're so much better defined, as to who gets to pick what, and you pick from certain columns and whatnot and whatever. But here, there's just nothing like that. Anyway, we're going to conduct that attack in there. I think the British will fight, because for the most part, might get lucky. This combat system can be really, really nasty. Oh, I could have cheated. I could have used this, but I don't particularly want to. That'll be useful in coming back to get to the Austrians if I defeat the English army. See, this is the thing. If the English try to withdraw, it might not be a bad idea to fall back and try to draw the French in. So I think I'll do that, because that'll give the coalition forces a chance to face France without facing the Grande Armée. So the British got away. I'm trying to look for my other leaders. I have this guy. Who the fuck is he? Some Dutch dude. Dan Diaz. He's not bad. He's a 2-star. He can't command a huge force. Problem is, there's not a whole fuckload I can do facing the army of the Rhine without an army. And while I have money to build an army, I don't really have the troops to support one. So some kind of attack coming from the north doesn't seem terribly valuable. I also don't have a lot of leaders with 4 leadership. The only other ones I have are down here, Saint-Cyr. I want to keep him in reserve to go in either direction. Massena, I don't want to attack across into Mantua. I want to beat Charles. Like, Charles is too good for Massena to just, like, be crossing a river and taking a shot against. That seems like a dumb idea. The Spaniards don't have any leaders of that quality. So I think the only thing I did was marched across. The Brits did get away. That's gonna give them, let me check interception, if I can withdraw 2 hexes. That's gonna give them the ability to maybe draw Napoleon further in. I don't need the whole fucking Grande Armée. By the way, the Grande Armée starts out overstacked, which is one of the reasons I left Soule back here with something. In addition, I've got some, what are they? I've got a supply depot there. Soule and that depot probably has a fair shot at handling the British Army. So, I mean, that's the whole thing. I don't need a huge fucking army up there in Britain, but I figure I'll take it because the Austrians are not going to win the war in this season, I say. But if I can knock Britain out, that's a worthwhile goal. Anyway, what do I get with the? Does it tell me? I think I can withdraw 2 hexes, but I don't really remember. It's going to be in the movement rules, I think. Avoiding combat. Tell me what happens. Into an adjacent hex. Okay, so yeah, so I was only able to move 1 hex. That means I can pull more chits if I want, or I can break. If I wasn't avoiding raid, I would definitely break at this point. I would have broken earlier, whatever. But I mean, even while I was playing, when I wasn't playing much raid, I would take a break. But I'm thinking maybe I want to pull more chits. We got the coalition naval chit. Well, one of the 2, because we both put our extra chit in this turn. We got the coalition naval chit. First thing I did was I moved the Russian Black Sea Fleet up and joined the Neapolitan fleet. They're allied. They can stack together. La la la. As far as I can tell, there's nothing that restricts me from moving through the Bosphorus. If somebody knows that I'm not supposed to, let me know where I fucking find it. I've looked, but unless it's on here. Yeah. I couldn't find anything. I think it's just another sea area. I mean, it makes sense if you're not at war that ships would be given passage. Maybe. Usually Gibraltar and the Bosphorus allow to be choke points, but this game is funky. It tries to simplify the naval quite a bit. But yeah, I'm moving Nelson up there. The big question is, do I play the Nelson card? And I think it's vital for me to do so at this point. The idea is I cut the French off supply, and then they start attritioning. And while I may not be able to win the war for Britain, it can at least cost them. But, and also make it so that he can't take a second activation and go chase me down. Okay, so I'm looking at the Allied fleet here, and yeah, I have Nelson, but I have a total of 4. That's what the French have. That would be 3 dice at 4 each. You know, basically a 50-50 on whether I clear it. I can't chance that. So, we get an extra die. I'll throw an Austrian die in. Both at +4. That should be enough. 9 to 14, 15. I'm sorry. These are at the same. So 9 to 15. That's going to be a 6-point difference, which is enough to kill a French fleet and force them out. Not a major victory, nothing too exciting. And the French have to withdraw. I guess we'll drop down to Malo. Now, the English could blockade this, but I don't think that's safe. But if I don't blockade it, I don't free these up. All right, we will send 2 shitty ships to blockade here. That'll pin the French in place. Nelson's still here. I think the Portsmouth fleets are coming out, but I got to consider my options. I do have other ships present in other places. I've got Russians, I've got Swedes. So I gotta kind of look and think about this. Before I do that, on a 4 through 6, Nelson is gone. And this gets removed from the game once played. It's like Nelson has 1 great hit. He's not dead though. And that's very good, because I don't want to lose that quality admiral. I'm going to leave him there, finishing his move after the blockading, because I want his fleet protecting the channel. So the Portsmouth fleet joined Nelson. These guys, I don't know, they got joined by a Swede, and here Russians and Swedes have protected this. I'm going to stop there. The naval move was quite large after what? After the attack on Britain, right? You know, not so much in terms of what I've had to do in the game. The naval move took some thinking and some die rollings and whatever. The French move took quite a few. Let's look at the rules, see what the fuck's up going on with them. This is a good point for me to stop. I got a little walk I can take, drop a couple of books off, peek at what's going on back in the park, because there's like, I don't know. This time of year, people are doing parties all the time there, and I kind of like to peek in on them. Haven't done that in a long time, except on Fridays when I'm heading out to the bar. Well, apparently I fucked up. Today is Friday, not Thursday. And, you know, I just mellowed out and thought I had the whole day and whatnot. And at like about 9 o'clock, I realized, wait a minute, I think it's actually Friday. And it is, so I missed dancing tonight. First time I've lost track of the days when it comes to Friday, but in part, it's probably because of not playing Raid yet. Like, I would have been on the computer and noticed, right, and been like, oh shit. But yeah, I thought I had another day. Anyway, let's pull another chit and keep going. I got coffee still. I mean, I wouldn't have made coffee. Everything in my day is just fucked up because of this. And it means that I go a week without anything. In a way, it's cool because my ankle is really fucked up right now. Anyway, we got an Empire Land 1. That means all the Empire forces get to move. But this is really problematic. The Grand Army is sitting in Britain. Cool, I have London. Cool, London's what I need, right? I need a supplied French unit in London to be able to win, which means I need to get my navies to win the channel back. And this game is going to go really, really south at this point for the French. Like, look, if Britain surrenders, that feels like it's a horrible thing. Especially if the Grand Army can come back and fight the Austrians next turn or whatever, get my Austerlitz. But losing the Grand Army, that might lose me this game right away. Done almost nothing on this shit. I moved a detachment down here. Probably move this one up. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to help protect Zurich. But I don't see much that I want to do. I want to play things out a little bit more. But the one chit, that's the one everything can move on. Oh, I haven't thought about the Spaniards. They have Portugal to go invade. Let's go do that. Not much of an invasion. I went and took Porto. I could have tried to siege Almeida, but I don't have good numbers there. I want to defeat the Portuguese army and then see what I can do. Moving as many Spaniards forward as I can. Damn map, and I gotta fix that. But I picked coalition land too. The problem is I moved most of my coalition forces already. Yeah, I can force march some of them, and in some cases, sure, I may want to. Like here, I could force march this detachment at no risk out of Ratisbon, but I can't put it here. And there's not a whole hell of a lot of places I want to go. Würzburg I could siege, but just, you know, a single detachment sieging, that's pretty risky. I'll check to see if I have any single units, any small forces I want to move, but I don't really want to take attrition. Weird little things I have to keep track of. One is detachments can't be in an army, and that's the thing with this. I could move this detachment to go join the Army of the Rhine, but I already replaced the one damaged unit. I can't do anything with these cuirassiers. The one damaged infantry regular that I could with a detachment. So detachments aren't able to occupy the same, they can't be in the same hex as an army. So that's just this weird little thing where, like, yeah, I got extra steps, but I can't actually use them. But I could use them with non-army forces. One important factor of that is it means an army can't be a supply link because it can't detach, it can't create a detachment in its location. I was able to get one detachment up here with the Russian army. I don't know. I got like an infantry here. This could continue moving forward. But then that would be a second activation on the army. I don't know if I want to do that. I think I'd rather play things out at this point. But I'm not sure. I'm just left with this, hey, I've moved my pieces. I don't really have anything I want to do anymore. Here it is Saturday morning. I know I'm not playing a lot. I'm reading a lot is what I'm doing. But it's been more than 24 hours without playing Raid. I don't know. You know, that wasn't my plan. My plan was, thinking it was Thursday, that I'd kind of stop playing and end up playing in the middle of the night for a little while. Well, I don't know what happened, but maybe I just know that that's not going to work, and my chip pull is a neutral land. We have to worry about that because we have 2 neutrals out there. Probably going to go out today, so because I'm up early and there's a Saturday market thing that I used to go to long ago. And since I miss dancing, hey, I'm capable of doing other things. Look, Coalition and Empire have to play their fight out, right? And the only real question is what their victory conditions will be when they try to push one. But our neutrals, Turkey, their goals, the only way they can win is to control Kiev, which, good luck, you know, getting this chunk, Ukraine, out of Russia, and either Odessa or Vienna. Well, Vienna you can't get. Like, the only way you'd control Vienna is you would have had to beat Russia and gotten Kiev, which is hard enough to get, right, as a peace condition, or be fighting both and take both of these and be sitting in Vienna. I mean, you could conceivably destroy Austria in this game, but for the most part, you're not going to do that, and you're not going to be able to take their capital away. So the only way you get Vienna is on 1 month you happen to be controlling it, and then they surrender to you, probably. I mean, they don't surrender automatically on Vienna. They need multiple places and la, la, la. But the possibility of an attack on Russia is intriguing. This is why War and Peace uses Turkey just as sort of an off-map war, because it didn't really fight anyone but Russia. Russia themselves, and Prussia. Prussia, their goals are all allocated to the west. So they want Hanover, Hamburg, and Paris, I think. It's like, and stuff they have. Like Warsaw and Saxony. And then, let me see. So they're not going to focus to the east against Russia or whatever, but I did look up Russia's victory conditions, and they are interested in Warsaw, which means they must beat Prussia. They must take something from Prussia. Now, in the historical circumstances, they got Warsaw. They got it from France, essentially. And, that's a workable solution, but their anti-French policy is probably weaker at this point than it is once Warsaw is in French hands. Right now, Russia might not be all that willing to expend a lot of effort to defeating France. But on top of Warsaw, they have to take either Paris or Constantinople. And again, these are things that it's hey, I won. So let's take Warsaw first, then figure out what's going to happen. And take Warsaw first right now as an anti-Prussian position. Russia doesn't want to break their alliance. If they can beat France, that's probably cool. Although they might be a little reticent about it and have to watch the automatic victory conditions and the victory points and all that kind of stuff to see, hey, how bad a situation, are we the ones who are going to win if France falls this early? That's one of the problems with this game, is that intrinsically, this really was a struggle of Europe against Napoleon. And as opposed to Napoleon against Europe. Okay, the other game by the same designer. And so anything that allows you to say, I'm not going to win, I'm going to pull out of this coalition, isn't necessarily that great. It's one of the biggest arguments I have against this, against War and Peace. Empires in Arms, less so. I feel like Empires in Arms does a better job, but maybe I'm mistaken, at least in the early part of the game, of making it very clear, look, we have to beat up France. I almost feel like many of the European powers felt that France felt that it was more of, would make a game that's more like, say, a Republic of Rome type game, or Canadian Civil War, where it feels like there's different variations in play, right? The worst thing is France surviving for most of these countries. Maybe not so much for Russia, though. Russia was theoretically more interested, Tilsit kind of showed that. They weren't that badly defeated, right? They were willing to let France be France, or the empire be the empire. They were not as anti-revolution and as threatened by the revolution at that point as Prussia and Austria were. But yeah, in Empires in Arms, it feels much more like you're constantly a threat from France, so you're going to have to keep beating France down. There's no automatic victory in that game. you try to get your advantages around the edges more, for the most part, and it feels much more like a real politic than this does, with its sort of imposed victory conditions that are just take these cities. Well, one of those cities is Prussian. And, now, Empires in Arms has the dominant power rules, which are kind of similar to the auto victory here. They don't win you the game, but they give you a huge advantage. And in those, yes, Russia wants Warsaw back. There are Austria wants Silesia back in that one. You know, so there are baked in things to make that power to give you a huge advantage, and that's almost always a goal that I have for my players in the game, but it's not the predominant goal. They're still trying to win the game, and in this one, the predominant goal involves going, at this point for Russia, it involves, I want to get Warsaw, you know? The bigger problem is, and both this and War and Peace suffer from it, is that you do a strict point calculation at the end of the game. And the end of the game in War and Peace is when Paris falls, I think. Maybe not, because there's the 100 days that gets tacked on there. Yeah. The end of the game in this, so in both it's a date end of the game, where you count up victory points, and you might well find yourself less willing to support fighting against France than turning on one of your supposed allies. You got to be real careful about that, because the fluidity of the situation could mean that France ends up winning instead of losing or something. And in fact, in War and Peace, France just automatically wins if they're holding Paris at the end of the game, which is really fucking weird. That's the Paris thing. The other thing that's a little fucked up about the victory conditions in these two, I had it in my head, I lost it, fuck me. God damn it. This is not old age. This happened to me all along, where my mouth runs ahead and, you know, I'm thinking about other things and my short-term memory just fails me in the midst of a conversation. It's kind of why I like fora and emails and stuff like that, is that I at least put a note in there or start the thought. I can't just put, and then I push it aside and then I go refine it. But like when you're speaking, you can't take those kind of diversions without blowing, you know, without putting something else out of your mind. It's really fucking weird. There is something else really, really key there. Oh yeah, what I was discussing about the Republic of Rome situation. Yeah, so the primary goal of some of these countries was try to maintain the status quo more or less and defeat France. And it's not that far from it, the automatic victory conditions in here, but when you get to the actual point victory conditions, there you start seeing, gosh, Prussia's a couple of points ahead of me. Now that may just mean being reticent to push the victory at that point, but you know, you start jockeying for position and stuff like that, instead of saying, hey, look, if we don't get rid of Napoleon, like, that's bad. But, you know, it's all kind of relative. And likewise, in War and Peace, if France doesn't win their automatic victory of survival, Paris alone, then and by the way, I'm convinced that, like, France can basically win that game by not doing much, by just trying to outweight the other powers. They don't have really, there's no real incentive to try to keep hitting other players because they don't have any automatic victory other than that. The game goes the full length, if I recall correctly. It might be that if you knock everyone out, you win, but that involves knocking Britain out, and even here, where I made the crossing, that might not be possible. Or it's probably not very easy. It's going to come down to when those naval ships fall and the luck of the battles. The French are no longer in as strong a position, I think. I don't know. There's a more powerful fleet in the Channel is really the big deal. But yeah, it almost feels like, hey, France survived and is fairly potent. Now, War and Peace takes this into account by saying, hey, France gets their automatic victory if Napoleon survives. But if France survived and is viable still at the end of the game, whatever that may mean, that feels like the empire collapses and you didn't come out as, the new Julius Caesar or whatever. Well, in that Julius Caesar position. Or if you want Augustus. It's hard for me to tell in that game because it's like, hey, look, who won the game? Did Marius win? Or did Caesar win? It's like there appear to be people who won. Was it Marius or Sulla? Yeah, it would be Marius. There appear to be people who have won the game at various stages. Now, you can make an argument that Marius was defeated after being declared dictator for life, that Caesar was murdered, and you do have that one turn you have to survive, and you could say it happened in that turn, and you could make that argument that the game went on in that way. But I know in the I remember there was something where it was obvious. Anyway, I don't know. It's not like Empires in Arms doesn't have its problems with its victory condition system either. Its victory conditions are based kind of on this glory concept, right? So Napoleon can win the game even if he's been deposed and Francis is destroyed and blah, blah, blah. If he did well enough through the course of the game, it's unlikely. Let's just put it that way. You want a powerful remnant of your nation with a lot backing it up, and the more powerful your nation is, something like France has a really higher victory point requirement than many of the others. And I feel like Russia has the easiest, and therefore they're the most peaceable of the countries, because they will win the game if nobody does anything. At least that's my take on it. All right. I am on Sunday morning. It's 9 a.m. I've been getting up pretty early recently for me. Still cold turkey on raid. The problem there is just this sort of, what do I do? Right now I'm reading a book and I'm just eating it up. I got tons of books I can do that, but it's as if I need something that is of absolutely no use in terms of work ate up my time, raid ate up my time, reading would eat up my time. It's not like I'm going to do more effective and useful things. Now, I probably will, but that's a different thing. Anyway, let's pull more chits. I'm not sure how much more is going to happen this turn. Certainly the other naval chit has to happen. But beyond that, if the French don't want to attack here, they won't. It just feels like, yeah, there's a fair amount of units that didn't want to do anything, and then the risk of a second activation, the attrition check for that's a painful thing. Force marching hurts, So it's like, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't force march in most games. Why would you do it here? Example, I got an Empire land chit. What did they do? Well, I moved Saint-Cyr up to join Messina, but there's really not a hell of a lot else that I want to do. Yeah. I'm in kind of a weird situation because the forces are not of the same size. There's an Austrian army up here and I don't have an army to face it. And here, the river line kind of tells me I don't want to fight. Napoleon, I don't want to do anything with him until and unless the channel is under my control. Fortunately for the coalition, they got their second coalition naval marker before the French get theirs, because this gives the French now an opportunity to clear the channel. They have a guaranteed opportunity to clear the channel and set up supplies. Not guaranteed to work, but they're guaranteed the opportunity. What happened was the fleets that were down here, the combined Russian Neapolitan fleet, came out, freed the Portuguese. I don't know. We had Collingwood, like, with the Portuguese. I think he took off with them as well. No, just Collingwood was there in that. And he gathered with that Russian Neapolitan fleet, some of which went to blockade La Coruna. There's two coalition, non-coalition. God damn it, I'm having trouble speaking. There's two Empire-aligned fleets left unblockaded. A Spanish one here and a French one here. So there's not, a huge amount of opportunity to beat Nelson in the Channel. But if the French get lucky the way they did on their first naval phase, they should be able to do so, right? Because most of it is really just the luck of the die rolls. And if you're looking at rolling 3 dice each, there's a fair, as we would be in the Channel, there's a fair chance that, Nelson's big +3 isn't enough. And especially since I don't think he has shit with him. I feel like breaking. Been up here too long. And that's the thing. I'm hoping to break that habit. But that habit came from way before raid. Up here I grabbed a Coalition Land 4, which would have been enough to allow either Charles to attack. I don't think whoever's here, Mac, of course, would be able to conduct siege operations. Why? I guess no, I've got a siege marker under there. Okay. Oh, fuck. I'm being clumsy as hell. So, the thing is, there might be some advantage to trying to speed things along with the coalition. But then there's the attrition cost. And speeding things along, what's the reason for it? Well, because Napoleon isn't able to intervene right away. So I could get more gains. But enough gains to win the game? I don't think so. Austria's automatic victory, I didn't look at it here. Dresden, don't have. Munich. I would have to take Bavaria for that, right? Yeah. Or be holding it. Venice, Mantua, Rome, and then Lyon or Paris. I mean, yeah, maybe. But on the other hand, if the Grand Army disintegrates in Britain due to attrition checks, it doesn't really matter. And if they don't, they'll be back and they'll stop us. But now we're on the Empire Naval. And this will be the big shot. I gotta take a look and try to figure out how to play this. This is the part of the game that feels, to me, the most abstract. Or if not abstract, the most likely to kind of really swing the game heavily, the naval operations. Because the odds are really so variable. It's very, very easy on 3 dice to be able to overcome the +1 or +2. And 3 die battles are going to be the norm because that's the stacking limitation, essentially. Anyway, I got to be as careful as I can, pick around the borders first, and then aim for the big prize. Nelson has a very powerful fleet with a +5 on his total die rolls, his +3 plus 2 more +1s. The French were able to get a couple of cracks at it. There was nothing, to prevent that. But they ended up losing several fleets in the process. And it's looking pretty ugly at this point for Napoleon being stuck in Britain. I don't know. This game may end real early, or maybe not. I don't know. There's a fair amount of resilience to the nations, but it always feels like, just like with the 1792 scenario, I feel like, wow, everything's just gone down the shitter at once. But this was a huge high gamble move, right? Could have knocked Britain out of the war immediately, but knocking the Grand Army out at this point in 1805 is pretty fucking impressive too. As I can see, that pretty much runs us down to the end of the turn. I pulled the last couple military land chits. Let's take a look at what we got at the end of the regular activation phase stuff. The final thing we hit is this final attrition phase. I don't think anybody's subject to it. Napoleon, the French forces, they're out of supply, but they've activated. They were in supply when they activated, so they get a free pass this turn. We get another crack at the British Navy, but it's beginning to look kind of hopeless. After that great luck early on, it was almost a trap, right? The Brits, the coalition as a whole, have a lot of extra fleets, and were able to, trap Napoleon in Britain, to be honest. But I don't think anything has an attrition check in play. There's nothing under siege that needs to make it, nothing that's out of supply and didn't move, which means we go to the conquest phase, and not much happened here either. We don't have Munich, so even if, and Ulm is part of Bavaria too, even if we had Bavaria completely captured, we wouldn't be getting it. Wurzburg up there is part of it too. I'm just looking at the borders. Not a lot moved, so there aren't a lot of places where we would see conquest. So nothing there. I guess the Brits could offer a peace or something. That's not going to happen. We will never surrender. We will fight them. Well, we will run away from them. And I think that's really pretty much it for the turn then, which puts us over into autumn. Now, I had a few extra chits in there. I had the winter phase chit. Once I hit it, I'm like, oh, it's summer. That doesn't impact me. I also had a siege chit in there. Why? Because it got scooped up. It's my way of counting winter hits on someone. All right, definite need for a break at this point. But yeah, I think this is a good place to call this video. I did a lot with the naval actions and whatnot. It's not going to be a huge long video, but that's okay. It gets us through that first season, and with very, very different decisions and outcomes than historically happened. Setting the stage. Is it a cliffhanger? I don't think so. I think the only question, cliffhanger-wise, is how bad is it that Napoleon loses He loses an army in Egypt, now he loses one in Britain. Someday he's going to learn not to go across water. Secret to all of this? Don't cross while the Brits have a naval activation ship. I think that was the big deal. The coalition having the naval activation ship. Did it guarantee it? Nah. But, you know, once they can kind of reposition and allocate their fleets where they need them, they're gonna win. They just have more ships total. They're gonna win it.